Awesome. Hi, so this is Rabba Rona with your weekly Torah message in times of Corona. This week we have a double parasha, Tazria and Metzora. So to make things more exciting, we have two teachers. With me is my teacher, colleague, and friend from Nashville today, the Reverend Alaina Kailyn Cobb.
Thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it.
It's an honor to have you with us. And Alaina is another transgender Bible scholar, and she has taught me a tremendous amount about the Christian scripture, and she's also pretty sharp with the Hebrew scriptures as well. And so it's wonderful to have her working with me. Today we're going to talk about the Metzora, the person who is struck with tzara'at, the biblical form of skin eruptions, commonly translated as leprosy. Now, when we talk about leprosy in the modern construct, we hear about Hansen's disease, which is a biological affliction. What you read about in Torah is not Hansen's disease, it's a spiritual malady. We read in the book of Numbers that Miriam is struck with tzara'at when she slanders Moses' wife, Zipporah. She calls Zipporah an Isha Cushite. Now, the term Cushi in Hebrew literally translates as an Ethiopian, but in vernacular or slang Hebrew, it means a black woman. And so Miriam is punished for speaking out against Moses for marrying a woman of a different race, and is struck with this tzara'at. In the rabbinic tradition, Lashon hara, evil speech, is considered one of the worst things that you can do to a person short of murdering them, because it's something that can't be taken back. And so we have a huge section of both of these long parshiot dedicated to people and their property that are struck by tzara'at, and how they have to go to the Kohen, the priest, to have ritual purification, cleanliness, and healing in order to recover from this. They don't go to a doctor because they aren't sick. They go to the Kohen because they are suffering from a spiritual malady. And this is very different than what we deal with today. Alaina?
Sure. Yeah, I do think it's interesting because they do share some overlap, or at least sort of this idea of a spiritual malady and the idea of a physical malady. And I mean, you even see in the Torah, you see almost a social distancing with people who are unclean, that they are to be kept outside, or there's to be a distance to keep everyone else from becoming unclean.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which is you don't think about germ theory happening until, I don't know, probably, I think germ theory came about in the late 1700s. Don't quote me on that. It could be quite wrong. But the idea of separating those who are sick could have been truly revolutionary. But the idea of separating those who have a spiritual malady can be worthwhile, but it can also be detrimental to the person. And there's this sort of line that I think has to be walked. I don't want to just keep rambling, so feel free to interject.
Yeah, you're right, because people would then tend to shun them, blacklist them, maybe not ever associate with them again. And we see the same kind of exclusion with certain groups in our societies today, wrongly, because people don't understand what we're going through. We have the same kinds of things with the queer community, with immigrant communities, with people with HIV. I remember the first time as an intern chaplain that I was working with an HIV patient, and I didn't understand how it was communicated and how terrified I was of spending time with her.
Mm, right. Yeah, and so when we talked about my coming on today, we talked a little bit about Jesus healing the lepers, and what that says. And I can only speak from a Christian perspective, um, but I think it has a lot to say to this concept. Not because I think this concept doesn't have weight and doesn't have meaning, but because I think that there is a tendency to with humans to or white to overdo things, or to if it's um, we tend to move towards shunning. We men tend to move towards seeing another human inhuman, and something that we see this as well as with other saints in the Christian tradition is this idea of leprosy being something, rather than a judgment on the person, it becomes a judgment on the society that they come from, taking care of them in their time of need and not taking care of them in their spiritual need as well as need. And Jesus was very much a rabbi. He knew these rules, he knew these teachings, and he also knew that we are human, and at times we stop seeing the humanity in others. And that, I mean, whether it's in the queer community, whether it's people infected with AIDS, whether it's just people who are ill in general. I mean, I worked hospice at one point, and you would often see people lose a sense of humanity around their patients, around people that are going to die. And that's a natural human reaction, but it's wrong. It's a natural human thing. We want to distance from the pain. We want to distance from what is happening in front of us because hearts hurt, or it's just too much, and we tend to worry. But it can be that tendency can drive us to seeing another human being as something less than they are, as something less than the image of God.
Well, and I think that the stories of the leper in the Christian Testament are just so powerful. I know that in the book of Matthew, you're commanded not to judge people.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that Jesus comes and humbles himself, lowers himself down from his lofty stature and washes their feet and heals them, and then blesses them and brings them into the community is such a powerful message, because we see things like during the time of the Indonesian tsunami about 16 years ago, the chief Sephardic rabbi Shlomo Amar famously said that the tsunami was caused because Indonesians were idolaters, and so God was punishing the Indonesian people. We see that during the AIDS crisis, when it first started, very many preachers were saying that it was God's punishment because God, quote unquote, hates fags. And we're seeing this today, the same kinds of things during the COVID plague.
Right. And
it looks like Alaina's locked up there on her feed. While she works to fix that, I'll guess I can continue. So we have horrible things coming out of places that the plague is God's punishment, again, for people who are queer or for being immigrants or for whatever it may be. But this couldn't be further from the truth. the fact is that the plague got so bad because we aren't good at taking care of our communities. We aren't good at taking care of the planet. We aren't good at taking care of things that need to be taken care of. And this is a natural outcome of the way the planet has developed. Whether or not this virus developed naturally or whether it was man-made is irrelevant. Whether the plague spread accidentally or whatever, it doesn't matter at this point. The fact is that human folly, not God's punishment of us, caused this thing to get so out of hand. In the book of Genesis, after God causes the flood, God makes the covenant of the rainbow and tells Noah that God will never try to cause mass destruction of humanity again. So, I've been asked by people, do I think this is the end times? Do I think God is coming down to smite us from this planet? And no, the answer is no, absolutely resoundingly no. Yes, there are horrible people saying horrible things out there. There are people saying that we should sacrifice the weak to save the strong. There are people who have made horrible calculuses out there that disabled and elderly people should not have health care, that only the otherwise healthy people should get health care resources right now. This is the kind of thing that the Nazis would do. We are not Nazis. We shouldn't allow ourselves to be lowered to standards like that. We have to do differently. This is an opportunity for us. As I've been saying throughout this crisis, we have opportunities here. We have ways of doing things better. We have ways of doing things differently. And there are so many wise people in our communities. My friend, my teacher, the city council person, Renata Rollins, here in Olympia yesterday or the day before said, wouldn't it be amazing if just 1,000 people in our community would donate their $1,200 stimulus checks to build up the people in Olympia? And I told her, Renata, if you're going to organize some kind of a program, I'm in. I will donate my money. But there has to be somebody worthy who is coordinating this, because otherwise the money gets wasted and squandered. And I'm not just going to throw my money away. So that's the problem. Somebody has to step up who knows how to organize and to do these things. And then, yes, I will absolutely contribute because I'm fortunate, I'm financially secure. I can afford to do that. But it's got to be somebody who's wise and knows how to organize. And I hope that Renata can do that. But there are opportunities, and those of us who can continue to serve those who are less fortunate. And I hope that throughout this crisis, we continue to take away these kinds of messages. The COVID crisis is not a plague on us because we're spiritually deficient. God is not punishing us for this. We don't speak for God. We know that this is not some kind of theodicy. We are being plagued by our own human folly and failings, but it's our own human strengths, our own human power and smarts, and our own human compassion that can turn this around and heal this place. And I hope that's the message that we can take from Shabbat Tazria Metzora. Shabbat Shalom. Peace and blessings to all.